Hey guys, welcome to the recap of one of the hardest days in my chess tournament career. Today I played 2 rounds with combined durations of like 8+ hours, and it was tough. Both games were very exciting, back and forth, so stay tuned. I will show you both. The second one lasted almost 100 moves. And my coach praised me about the second game. About the first game, he said something else. Well, I'll tell you once we analyze the moves. So let's dive into the first one. As you may remember, if you watched the previous recaps, I'm one of the lowest seeded players in the tournament, lowest rated. So I keep playing much higher rated players, but in the first round of today, I play an opponent who is not that much higher rated, just 150 points higher rated, which is nothing if we compare him to my other opponents who were like 500 points higher rated than me. So I was feeling quite optimistic about this game, and I have just half a point out of 4 before this round. So I need to score some wins or at least draws. Let's see if I managed this. So he opens up with knight f3, and he chooses this double fianchetto variation. So both bishops are on the largest, longest diagonals. It is an interesting setup. My opponent seems to like it, and I decide to try and create this central trifecta of pawns that is controlling the d4 square and trying to counter measure this dark squared bishop, which is one of the decent plans in such position. I've analyzed it before the game. I saw that among other openings my opponent plays this, so I was prepared. He develops, I develop, and here there is a plan of going for e3, d4, but it is risky. Black sometimes plays e4, bishop f5, and has this powerful central control. So my opponent decides to go for a d3 setup, a different one. And I go h6. h6 is a very useful move in this position because I want to activate my bishop to e6, but that would be met by knight g5 attacking the bishop. So I need to take the square so that I could go bishop e6. Actually, this is a book move. The chess.com's engine knows this opening. Around here is where my opening theory ended, so I was playing on my own, and he went knight e1, which looks a little bit clumsy. I thought that knight d2 is more logical, but it also looks fine. He wants to go f4. White in such positions generally wants to go f4 to play for some pawn breaks on that side of the board, because where else can white play? b4 is impossible. It's controlled by too many pieces of mine, and you should always, when choosing a plan in chess, look for pawn breaks. The only sensible pawn break for white here is f4. So white plays for f4. I go bishop e6, continuing my plan. He puts the knight in the center. I go queen d7. My plan is to put the bishop on h3 and to trade this light squared bishop, because this light squared bishop is kind of powerful for white. This dark squared bishop is seeing my pawns and is looking at my pawns and nothing else, so I'm not afraid of that one. But this one is kind of powerful. I want to trade it, and also once I trade it, those light squares around the enemy king will be weak. So this is my plan, very standard in such positions. He goes f4, and I go knight h5 first, because if I go bishop h3 immediately here, he can, well, in some variations, not exactly right now, but in some variations I didn't like the fact that he can take here, and my knight will be hanging several times. So here it's not exactly dangerous because I can take on d5, but you get what I'm saying. So I wanted to activate this knight, and for it not to be hanging, I went knight h5, which is top engine choice, by the way. I'm also putting pressure on g3 now that the f2 pawn has left its home square and is not protecting the square. In future, maybe I'll go here, maybe he'll trade. I go here, and I'm putting pressure on g3 pawn. Maybe in some variations I can even sack the knight there to at least get a perpetual check or a powerful attack. So I'm feeling confident that my position is good. I also want to reroute that knight to put pressure. So I'm very optimistic about my position here. He goes e3, preventing my plan with knight d4, very clever. And I go bishop h3 still, and I completely miss his response. I was flabbergasted when I saw his response. I didn't believe that this move should exist. So I was calculating here, takes, and I thought maybe he'll go g4. So taking my knight, but I'll just drop back and it's a balanced position. This is what I analyzed here. Also, I thought that perhaps he can go for f takes e5, but I wanted to take with the knight, and then my knight later on will, after we trade these bishops, will join the attack from g4 maybe, or maybe I go f5, g5 and launch an attack. So I was very optimistic, and I calculated that, and he went f5, and I was like, what? Why? I can just take. And then I realized I cannot, because he'll sack the rook and go g4, and it's a fork. And he will get 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, which is materially okay for me, but positionally I'm busted. I thought that this is close to losing, and the computer agrees. So I decided not to go for this. And I was disappointed in myself for not seeing such an obvious move, f5. Why didn't I see it? I don't know, maybe something clicked or didn't rather click inside my head. So, okay, all right, the game goes on, life goes on, I take. And his position is better because of this advanced pawn. Now he wants to go f6 if I do nothing. If like I go a6, for example, fall asleep at the wheel, he goes f6 and I'm completely cooked. My bishop will never see the light of day. This knight is very powerful. This rook is open now, so yeah, not pleasant. So I have to prevent f6. I go knight f6. He goes e4. Maybe he'll put the knight here, cementing this d5 outpost. Maybe he'll go here, putting pressure on g6. He'll definitely attack me on the king side, because this is where his pawns are further advanced. This is a rule of thumb. You should attack on the flank where your pawns are further advanced. So I know that this is not a good position for me, and I think, what can I do? For example, if I take here, I realize that he has f6, and again my bishop will never see the light of day. So this is out of the question. And here I come up with a plan. After e4, so this is where he went e4, I go h5 to free this diagonal for the bishop. For example, if he does nothing here, if he goes rook b1, for example, I take. And if he here goes f6, I go bishop h6, and suddenly my bishop has seen the light of day. And it's feeling great. Actually, the position is around equal now. So this is my plan. Of course, this will happen only if he falls asleep at the wheel. He doesn't. He goes knight h4, putting more pressure on g6 pawn. My opponent in this game played at like 94% accuracy. Very, very good, very decent game. I have to defend this pawn. And now, again, top engine choice, bishop c1. So his bishop used to stand idly on this diagonal, not doing anything. And now he has rerouted it. And maybe he'll put it here, or maybe it will just control the h6 square. Definitely, it's a great position for the bishop. And I cannot trade the bishops now, because knight takes f6 will be a fork. My bishop is serving an important purpose of defending this knight. So I have to untangle somehow, and I decide to trade on d5 and jump in via d4. At least I have one good piece now. This knight on d4 is formidable. It is greatly positioned on this central outpost, but it's not enough. White's position is still dominating. He goes g4, continuing to attack, to barrel down. If I take, for example, he'll take with the queen, and I'm cooked. My king will get mated, or I'll lose a bunch of material. So here, I realize that I'm in trouble. And if I go, for example, bishop here, he goes g5 and f6. And my bishop is in jail again for life. It's a double life sentence to the bishop. Not good, not good. So I thought that my bishop did not deserve this. He did not do anything horrible to justify such punishment. And I remembered the words of my coach here. He said many times to me, when you are attacked, and my coach is one of the best coaches in the world, Grandmaster Farukh Amanatov. He has coached many top GMs. He has coached Alireza Firouzja at some point, for example. So yeah, you should listen to his advice. And he said, if you're getting attacked, Don't be afraid to sacrifice, to try and muddy the waters to create some counterplay. So this is exactly what I did. Instead of going bishop h6, I went g5, sacrificing this pawn to create some counterplay, because he takes and I go rook g8, and suddenly if this file opens up, maybe I get some attack, maybe I'll be attacking him. Objectively, of course, the computer says it's stupid, I just gave up a pawn, but otherwise I would be lost no matter what, and now I'm creating counterplay. And in such games, in 80% of such games, you will still lose. Because you have a losing position against a good opponent. But in 20% of these games, you will muddy the waters and you will draw, or maybe sometimes even get wins out of completely lost positions. So this is a good piece of advice from my coach. Please use it. So here he goes bishop e3. I expected him to go queen d2, and I was calculating some lines. I wanted to make bishop h6 work. Takes and then check. And if he goes here, I have rook to g8, and suddenly I'm better because I'll take this bishop sooner rather than later. So I was calculating this, but then I realized he can just go king h1, and I cannot take because queen g5, and this is a fork. Checkmate, or a rook will be dead. If rook g4, he'll just take on h5, and still there are unstoppable threats here. Unfortunately, this doesn't work, so I decided that probably I will not go bishop. So if he goes queen d2 here, defending the bishop, I will not go bishop h6. I thought I'll go f6. And here I wanted to go bishop h6. And here it's working. The same idea, because g5 is controlled by the pawn. So the difference in this position is that queen g5 is impossible. So at least I have some counterplay here. Of course, he's not obliged to take on h6. Once I go bishop h6, he has knight g6, for example, a much better move. And here I would have taken the pawn. This is what I calculated. And I thought that I'm probably still lost, but I have some counterplay. Knight f3 check is coming. And yeah, I'm correct. This gives some chances to black. Plus 1.2, so it's not even lost. It's close to losing, but not lost yet. But he didn't go for that variation. So I expected him to go queen d2. Instead, he dropped back with the bishop to e3, which is also a decent move. And here, I decided to take. And here he went f6. Nice move. Of course, I cannot take because the pawn is protected. And if I go bishop h6, I calculated that this sequence of moves will happen. This is a check. If I take, he'll take by rook, and I'll get checkmated soon. If I don't take, if I go king h7, then, I don't know, queen e1, for example. This will be a checkmate soon. So I calculated this, and I realized that in this position, after f6, bishop h6 is out of the question. So I thought, you know what, let's have some fun. Let's create some chaos on the board. Knight f3 check. And I had around 10 minutes at this point. It's also a losing move, but at least it creates some chaos. So I'm sacking this g7 bishop, but I will get some attack over there. So I go queen g4 check. He goes king f2. Of course, this would be fatal for him, checkmate. So he goes king f2. Unfortunately, I don't have like a mating sequence of moves. Queen g4, for example, he just kites on e1 and it's winning for him. But instead, I check over here, and he has to take the f3 pawn, the only legal move the king has. And at least his king is close to the center. I have some counter chances. Maybe I can trick him somehow. I have around like 7 minutes here, and he has like 15 minutes. So time pressure adds to the pressure, psychological pressure and pressure on the board. So who knows what happens. I take. He drops back, he tries to run with the king, I check him, and I add another rook to the attack. And suddenly it turns out that if he takes, he loses. Because if he goes here, this is a checkmate. And if he goes here, I just take on h2. And checkmate will ensue soon. So of course he sees this. Of course he does not play checkers, he plays chess, he's not obliged to take. He goes queen f1, strengthening the defense of f2. I check him, and here I execute a beautiful move, queen f3. He cannot take because the rook is pinned. It is kind of rare that you see a rook getting pinned by another rook, but this is what we have here. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. Unfortunately, he can just go queen e2 here, and everything is protected. I drop back. He overprotects this rook. Now all his pieces hold hands to disallow me from breaking through. And unfortunately, here I try my last resource. I want to go f4, but of course he just takes, and I have nothing left. I take, he takes, he blocks, and I resign because everything will get traded and I'm down a piece and I have no counterplay. And unfortunately, I lose the 4th game in a row. Now I have just a half point out of 5. But this is not the end of the story. There is the second round of the day that lasted around 100 moves, and you will not believe what happened there. I was paired against an even stronger opponent, Behruz Umarov, who is rated close to 2200, and actually I played that very same opponent a year ago in a tournament in Kazakhstan also, and I lost. So I wanted to get my revenge. And let's see how we fared. So this is the opening. Here he chose a6, flexible setup, and I chose the chameleon Sicilian, knight g2 e2. Why is it called chameleon? Because like chameleon, I try to adapt to the situation. In some variations, I go d4, he takes, I take on d4, and this is the same as knight f3. So like, for example, let's say this happens. This position is the same as this position if I go d4. So this is like a chameleon adapting, but in some other variations, I don't go d4. So I'm flexible, and so this is the idea of this variation. Here he chooses an interesting move, e5. I remember that this is possible here, but I didn't frankly remember the theory. I did not have time to prepare because this was the second round of the day. It started 1 hour after my first game ended, and I just had time to grab some lunch. So, okay, I decided to improvise and put my knight on the d5 square, which turns out to be the top engine choice. Well, it's logical. Whenever your opponent goes c5 and e5, he can no longer go c6 or e6, so this square is an outpost for the knight. So we develop like this. I castle, and here I'm not afraid of him taking, because then he will extend the diagonal, prolong the diagonal that my bishop has. So I just go d3. He castles, and here the engine strongly recommends f4, and pushing with f5 gives me the vibes of the previous game, right? My opponent also in that game put the knight on the d5 and pushed f4, f5. I didn't. I thought about this plan, but I didn't like it, and I went bishop e3, also a normal move, but I don't have any advantage in this variation. It's around equal. I wanted to go c3 and then push d4. That was my idea, to blow open the center and to trade this dark squared bishop of his to create dark squared weaknesses. Again, a similar plan to what I did in the previous game, if you remember. So we do just that. We exchange everything in the center, and I've achieved my goal, but I've misevaluated the position. I thought that white should be a little bit better. Turns out that it's around equal. Even the computer says that it's minus 0.24, so black is a tiny bit better. Why? Because probably this pawn is restricting the scope of my bishop, and his pawn, I thought it's a weakness, but I cannot get to it. A weakness is a very important concept in chess, but a weakness is not a weakness when you cannot exploit it. It's very important to understand when a pawn that is isolated is a weakness and when it is not. And here, his pawn is not a weakness. I didn't realize that at the moment. And once we trade the dark squared bishops, yes, he will have holes on the dark squares, but I don't have enough pieces to attack him and to exploit this. So this doesn't matter. What matters is that his bishop is better than mine, because it will be somewhere like here or here, and my bishop needs to guard this pawn. So this is like a tiniest edge for black, but it should be a draw, of course. So he activates the rook, I activate another rook, we trade the rooks, and here I decide to trade the bishops, because anyway, that's what I wanted to do. I would have loved to check him over here, but unfortunately he has this, and if we trade, this is a favorable endgame for him because his king is active. Kings in endgames should be closer to the center, so I did not want to help him with that. Instead, I decided his rook is very active. I'll trade a pair of rooks. The computer agrees that this is sensible, and we get this equal endgame. he goes queen f6, and I go queen d2. He goes bishop b5, and somewhere around here I offer him a draw because I just don't see how any of us can continue in this game. It's move 21. I think neither of us can make progress. We just can shuffle pieces and nobody will win this game. It's a dead draw. So he, for some reason, declines, probably because he's higher rated than me. He wants to get a win. I go h4, freeing some, creating some loft for my king. And I go king h2 to sidestep any checks, possibly on this line file. And here I can basically do nothing and just wait for move repetition. But I decide, okay, he declined the draw. Maybe I can create something. Maybe I can punish him for declining the draw. We shuffle some pieces. b3 is a useful move, restricting his bishop. He goes f6, which is usually you shouldn't go f6. It's not a good move, creating weaknesses of the king. But he probably wanted to go g5 at some point. I don't know why, but this is the move he made. It's still a dead draw, of course. Queen d4. Queens should be centralized. You should put your queens on central squares whenever possible. If they do not get harassed, then you should do this. So a queen in the center is seeing lots of squares, and it's positioned amazingly. It sees the whole board. So this is what you should aim for when using your queen in endgames. He maneuvers his queen. I go bishop h3, and this is the weakness of the move f7 to f6. I want to exploit this weakness. I now want to put my bishop on e6. When this pawn was here, that would be impossible, but now it is possible, and very much so. So he drops back, and I go bishop e6, and suddenly I'm a little bit better. Just a little bit, because this bishop is very strong. But still, I will never break through if he plays the correct way. If he goes queen c7, for example, and then just stands and does nothing, maybe like bishop f7, bishop e8, back and forth, and I will never make progress. But at least here I realize that I'm a little bit better, so let's play some more chess. He goes queen c7, I go g4. I try to use the fact that he is pinned over this diagonal and to create some problems for his king. He, of course, doesn't want that, and he goes g5, but now I can go h5. And his bishop is restricted. His bishop will never go to this diagonal. And also, this square is weak now. And if this bishop leaves this diagonal, then I can go queen d3, queen g6, and destroy his king. So his bishop has to stay guarding this square at all cost. And here, my advantage is growing. I'm already significantly better, plus 0.5. So a pleasant advantage, but still nothing too crazy. The computer defends it easily. But let's see how I proceeded. He goes b6. He wants to trade the queens because the endgame will be equal. I go b4, preventing him from doing that. He trades the pawns, and here I maneuver my king closer to the center to overprotect this pawn so that it's not hanging in any variations. He goes queen b7, and he clearly wants to trade the queens. Again, I do not let him do that, restricting his queen, and he goes a4. And here I come up with a brilliant plan. I go queen e4, and he falls right into my trap. He goes queen b3, and he suddenly lost. Why? Because I find a brilliant move, bishop g8. My bishop can be taken, but then I'll take his bishop. This is what will happen. Takes, check, 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 and like this will fall as well. And if he goes king e8, then I'll just push h6, h7, h8 queen, and I'm winning. So he cannot take my bishop. He did not see this move. He was surprised when it happened on the board, bishop g8. And he realized that his only move is king f8, because if the bishop is hanging, if he defends the bishop, for example, like this, then I have queen h7. And again, I'm taking everything like bishop e6, and then I'll take everything. So he cannot defend the bishop. If he leaves with the bishop to b5, for example, then queen here is checkmate in 2. Or this is also funny, checkmate. So again, he has to stay guarding the g6 square with the bishop. This is the consequence of his sloppy f6 and g5 moves. The light squares are very weak here. So he's suffering here and he realizes it. But he goes king f8, at least now he's not lost immediately. And here I entered a deep think. I had like maybe 7 minutes here. And I was calculating this variation, queen h7. It is the winning move. And I calculated that if he takes, which is probably the best move, I cannot take because he'll take the bishop, so I have to go bishop e6. Now I'm threatening to take. His probably best move is to go queen c3, protecting at least this pawn. I check him. I check him again. This is what I calculated. And then I calculated, what if I just push the pawn? h6, a3, h7, a2. I make the queen. He makes the queen. And this is a funny checkmate. Queen d7 checkmate. I calculated all this variation. He cannot take because he's pinned. So this is a checkmate. We both make queens, but I'm the first one to get to his king. So I was very pleased. I thought, wow, I'm winning. Let me double check everything. And then I realized that he has queen d4 or e5, doesn't matter. Let's say queen d4. Or not here. After queen here, takes, check here, h6, he has queen e5 or queen d4, similar. And I realized that this is annoying because he might get a perpetual check. Because if I push h7, he checks me. And from afar, this looked like a perpetual. I did not see a way to escape. Because if I go here, he'll check me over here. If I go here, he'll check me over here. If I go here, he'll check me over here. But it turns out that there is a way out of this. That I can go here. And if he checks me, I go here. And I escape. I somehow didn't see it. And I was like, okay, I need to double check everything before going for this long variation. Before going for queen h7 here, which I thought should be the move. I thought, you know what, let me just repeat the moves because I had like 2 minutes at this point already, and I thought I should repeat the moves once, repeat the position. I'll just drop back with the bishop, and then I'll be threatening queen h7 again, so he will have to go king g7. And then I can go bishop g8 again, and once he goes king f8, I have an extra minute and a half, because with each move we get a 30-second increment. And I thought, and here I will have an extra minute and a half, I will double check everything, and then I'll probably go queen h7. And I thought probably this is the move. I thought maybe also queen is6, but I thought no, it probably doesn't work because he will have some queen c3, queen e5 or something of that sort. So I decided probably this should be the move, but let me repeat the moves. So I repeated the moves here once. I went, let me find the position. So here, yeah, here. I went bishop e6, anticipating king g7 and move repetition. And he went queen b7. And suddenly I was like, whoops. I had a completely winning position, and I missed the fact that he does not have to go king g7. He can go queen b7 and control the 7th rank, and now I'm no longer winning. I'm still better. I can put pressure, but it's really annoying, and I have like 2 minutes on the clock. So, okay, I decide to compose myself and to play like Magnus Carlsen, because I'm still better. I know that I should be better. So I proceed to maneuver my pieces a little bit. Now the threat is a discovered check, so he draws back. I go here. Now the threat is the pawn. He goes here. Now I go here. Slow maneuvering game, trying to find some weak spots for him. He activates. I go here. Now again, this is a threat of a discovered check. He goes here. I go here. Now the threat is this check, infiltration, and then this. So he drops back. I drop back. Now the threat is infiltration over here. He tries to defend it. Now I go here. Now I again harass this pawn, or maybe I want to infiltrate over there. He defends. I infiltrate. He drops back. I drop back as well. Shuffling. Every day I'm shuffling. Like now this is the idea. Winning his queen. He has to drop back. Now queen b1. And here I was like, I'm so clever. I put him in Zugzwang because his queen has to stay guarding the bishop, and also to stay guarding the 7th rank. For example, if it goes queen b8, now I infiltrate over here, and he no longer has queen g7, the move that he used, the idea that he used before. So he can not teleport his queen over there. And this is threatened. And if he goes here, then this will happen. And he will get destroyed. Like, at least like this, for example. So I'm winning. If the queen goes to b8, the queen has to stay guarding the 7th rank. But it also has to stay guarding the bishop. If it goes, for example, to c7, I'll just take the bishop. So where does the queen go? If the queen goes to b6, again, queen g6, and it's lights out. So the only move that he has now is bishop a6. And if we trade, it's a draw, of course, but we don't trade. Here I go queen g6, forcing him to go here again, and then I drop back. And then this pawn is hanging. And the only way he can defend it is this, I thought. And then I have this. And this is a fork. And I win at least a pawn. This is what I calculated within like a minute that I had on the clock at this point. And I was surprised that he found a cool resource, queen a7. He's not defending this pawn directly, but he's defending it indirectly. Because if I take, this is a check. And I lose my queen. So of course I cannot take on a4. This is annoying. I'm still winning, it turns out, according to the engine. Of course, I don't know that during the game. I suspect that I should be better, but I don't know how much better. I go queen b4, taking this pawn, and he goes king a7. And here, again, I cannot take because bishop f1 will happen with check, so I go king g3, sidestepping any checks. Now I'm threatening the pawn. Turns out it's a mistake. Turns out I should have gone, you know what I should have done? Queen b1 with the same threat. Again, playing this tickle game, back and forth, teasing him. He has again to drop back. So if I go here, he'll go here. And now I can go queen c2. I attack the pawn and I want maybe to infiltrate. And if he goes here, this is what the computer saw. Wow. Queen b2, it's a fork. Forking the bishop and the pawn. Of course, I would have seen it if I had like 10 minutes on the clock to analyze everything, but I had no time. I was already playing on increment, so I didn't see this. But it's beautiful. So here, I just went king g3, sidestepping any checks. Now I'm threatening the pawn. He goes bishop d3. Now he's defending the pawn. I go queen c3, harassing the bishop. He drops back, and now I infiltrate. And it's again a mistake. But it's hard to judge me here. My coach told me that it was an okay game. He still liked it. Everybody makes mistakes, except engines. So here it turns out that I again missed a win. Queen c2 was a win, again with infiltration ideas. And if I go, well, the idea is to infiltrate over here. And if he goes here, then queen b2 with the same idea. Yeah, winning the pawn. Unfortunately, I did not spot this. So instead, I decided I'll infiltrate on the 8th. And I thought this is a good idea. Some threats. And actually, this is, again, a spot where my opponent made the mistake. My opponent is 2200 rated. A very strong opponent. So you should realize that it's not easy to play such endgames. He goes bishop e8, and it turns out this is a fatal mistake, and he's lost again. If I find bishop f5, which is not a difficult move to find, I threaten queen e6, and I actually saw that move. But I decided that he'll go bishop f7, attacking my pawn and defending e6, and I didn't see a way forward. It turns out I should have spotted this move, and I'm winning. Because if he takes, of course, this is a winning position for me. I will queen very soon. If he doesn't take, I'll take his bishop, and my queen will harass his king and take the pawns. And if he takes the pawn, this is checkmate in 1. I completely missed this idea of bishop g6, unfortunately, in this position. So this is why I did not go bishop f5, because I was afraid of bishop f7. I didn't see bishop g6. And I had like 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. With every move, I got an extra 30 seconds, so I was playing on increment. This is move 55. But this is not the end of the game. The game lasted 30 more moves. So with the same idea, I went bishop g8, also to put the queen on e6. Same idea. So I thought if he goes here, then I'll just take and go queen e6, and yeah, I'm winning. I'll take this pawn sooner rather than later. If he goes here, I can go take this pawn, for example. So I thought, wow, I should be winning. Queen e6 is unstoppable. And then I realized that he has bishop d6, d7, and he's controlling everything. And then I thought, okay, doesn't matter. I drop back, and now I infiltrate over there, and he cannot stop it. And then he goes queen d4, centralizing the queen. Again, I told you this is a very good idea. And I completely missed the fact that after check, this pawn is hanging. He has this threat. I completely missed it. And if I go f3, for example, I get mated. Queen g1. And then bishop b5. And this is a checkmate threat. So there is a risk of losing this position. And actually, here, my clock is ticking down, seconds ticking down. I have like 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and I panic. And I realize that if I take, he takes with check. And at the very least, he has a perpetual check. So we have to repeat the position. Because if I go king f1, bishop b5 will be a checkmate in 2. So I briefly analyzed this. I realized that this is bad. That if I take on h6, queen g4 is unpleasant. And I go bishop e6 with like 5 seconds left on the clock at this point, blocking this diagonal. I understand that probably I'm no longer winning, but at least it should be a draw. He checks me, he takes the pawn, and he takes another pawn with check. But here, he cannot take this pawn, because if he takes this pawn, this will be a checkmate. So he has to take that pawn to prevent checkmate. But then I'll take that pawn. This is what I briefly calculated. And I thought that he'll be a pawn or two up, but my h-pawn should compensate for material disadvantage. And I was right. And I remembered the lesson that I had with my coach, who told me in queen endgames, it doesn't matter how many pawns you have. It matters if you have a passed pawn and if it's advanced. And here, this is exactly what I have. So he gave me a couple of checks. He wanted me to go to e1, of course, to take with check, but I didn't fall for that. So he took without a check, and I took on h6. I checked him again, and I pushed. And I realized that he has 4 pawns and I have 3, but my pawns are more dangerous. This pawn is close to queening, and he'll probably win it, but then I'll win this pawn. And this a pawn will march forward. And probably because my king is so weak, he will always have a perpetual check, so it will be a draw, but at least I'm not in danger. That's what I thought. I was correct. My coach praised my endgame technique here. So my opponent decided to take the h-pawn. Okay, he took it, but now my a-pawn is running. As I already said, it doesn't matter how many pawns your opponents have. You can even win such positions down a couple of pawns if your passed pawn is close to queening. Because a queen and a passed pawn versus a queen, it's not an equal fight. You will queen unless your opponent delivers a perpetual check. So my opponent again centralizes the queen. Very, very good technique. The queen sees all sides of the board. Also, it prevents my pawn from advancing. Here I go queen b2. This is a multi-purpose move. Of course, I'm attacking this pawn, but also I want to go queen b5 and push the pawn further. And here I calculate that he has a draw, but okay, I'm fine with the draw at this point. He can take this pawn, but then I'll take this pawn with check and this pawn, and this is a draw, of course, 1-on-1, queen endgame, that draw. So he also, of course, saw it, this check and fork and to draw, but he decided to play on. He pushed f5. And here, of course, I have some perpetuals like this or like this, but I decided to try and press a little bit. I went queen b5, because if he takes, of course, he's losing. My pawn will queen and his king is not in time. It doesn't matter that he has extra pawns. So he cannot take. He checked me and he pushed his pawn, but my pawn is further advanced. He checked me again, checked me, went here. I pushed even further. Here he probably wanted to create some mating net around my king, but he's not in time. He has to march his king here to deliver some checkmate, but then I will always have some checks and he will not be in time. So he marches the king, I push the pawn, he checks me, and here he realizes that he's not in time and he has to deliver a perpetual check. And this is how the game ends. Threefold repetition, a draw in 84 moves. I was so drained of energy after this game. You can imagine, probably. It was a tough day, a very tough day, but at least I got my deserved half a point. I could have won, but I could have lost also if I did something stupid. So I think it's a normal result. And yeah, I still have 4 rounds to play, and maybe I can get some points and rating points. By the way, I have just 1 out of 6. This is the worst tournament ever, but it's not the worst tournament ever because average rating of my opponents is like around 2300 and I'm 1900. So of course I knew that I will lose a bunch of games, and this is a very valuable experience for me, so it's all right. And I have actually gained some rating points because I drew 2 strong opponents, one IM and this guy who is 2200. So even though I lost a bunch of games, I still gained rating, and I hope I will get more. Thank you everyone for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.